Okay. It's right before 3, but we can jump into the questions if that's, I feel like they'll be most efficient.
Give me a sense of how long you want the answers to be. Like what's your total time that you're trying to hit?
Sure. So we didn't, hit, we didn't have official time set for each interview, but we do have 5 or 6 professors, other professors that are also being interviewed. So I think probably for each one, we wouldn't want it to be more than 4 minutes.
Okay.
So
I would need something soundbitey, because I could answer one question for 4 minutes.
Yeah, I actually think.
All right, I got it.
I actually think though, yeah, if some of them feel, I would say go with your gut. If some of them you feel like the soundbitey answer is best, then go for that. I think longer is better in the sense of we can always edit down.
Yeah.
So,
okay. And who are your other 7?
Let's see.
It's all right if you don't know.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm pulling up.
Right. I'm just nosy.
I mean, I know we asked Professor Crenshaw, but she is busy right now, so she said to reach back out in the summer. Professor Torres is someone who I know was confirmed, and those are the only ones I know off the top of my head.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but I can email you and let you know.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a lawyerly answer.
I'll get back to you. I've managed to learn that in 1L, so far. Wow, before I jump in, I really do want to say again, thank you so much. I think even just this opportunity was something, if you had told me 2 years ago I would have been doing this, it would have blown my mind. I'm really honored to be speaking with you this afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, this morning for you. I got really into critical race theory in undergrad, and it's still a very guiding force. Yeah. And your name was thrown around so much in these conferences that I went to and these meetings, and so it's like wow. I'm starstruck.
Great.
So,
Great.
yeah, so thank you. And so I will. Yeah.
You guys, in whatever you're doing, you should put yourselves in it and say exactly that, because I think it's good for your classmates to hear that these are people taken seriously, and particularly critical race theory is taken more seriously outside of law schools than in law schools. So you heard about it as an undergraduate because your journalism professors and political science or women's studies, whatever you were taking, take this work very seriously. Your own faculty at Harvard does not take it seriously. And that's interesting, so you guys should somehow get yourselves into this.
Yeah.
Maybe little essays or some little paragraphs you can stick in there.
Yeah, that's a great idea, to ground it, but also legitimize it. Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, thank you. Noted. And unfortunate that it's not taken seriously here. So I'll go through the 6 questions that Erica sent, and if there's also any you don't want to answer, we can skip. So feel free to say that as well. So the first one was, when you were a law student, how did you fight different forces that seek to de-radicalize students and convince them that law is a natural force that can't be used for undoing these systemic issues?
Well, I was a law student in the 70s, and I actually went to law school thinking I was going to take a break from activism and just do really well in law school so I could become a good lawyer. And I was organized by people in the community, so I was not able to kind of take that break. And so I was involved in things like the founding of the local chapter in Honolulu of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, which came out of the Free Angela Davis movement. Angela Davis came to speak in Hawaii. A bunch of students organized to bring her out. And again, it was undergraduates, and they dragged me in. I was a law student. They said, help us.
Wow.
We're bringing Angela Davis out. And I met her, and she was amazing. And through that led to a bunch of other organizing around things like, at that time, it was runaway shops. So we still had manufacturing in the United States, and we were trying to protect union jobs, for instance, in the textile industry in the South. And the Free Wilmington 10 movement, that was political prisoners that had been doing human rights work in North Carolina and were railroaded. into jail.
Mm.
And so many things. I was organized to be a volunteer researcher for legislative testimony for the local branch of the ACLU. People kept coming to me and saying, we need you. And my plan, which was just stay in the law library and get straight A's, was kind of railroaded by these community groups. And that ended up being really important for my development as a lawyer and for my career, because being in touch with people who were doing things to make life better for people who are actually suffering in my community reminded me why I needed to become a lawyer, and a good lawyer. And also gave me a lot of grounding in the work that eventually became critical race theory. You know, thinking about the ways in which racism actually impacts people's lives in concrete and material ways changed my thinking about the legal system and legal ideology.
Yeah, that's really helpful and really powerful. And a follow-up question that's actually, not on the list that I have for that is, I think a lot of students, especially students of color, we are, so drawn into that world of organizing and activism as law school students. And there is this balance, at least that I'm feeling it as a 1L, and I know many others, this tug of war of wanting to learn how to be a good lawyer so we can actually use the law once we graduate, but also feeling really overwhelmed by all these organizing opportunities. And so what would you say, as a 1L or as just a law student, how do you find that balance between organizing but also learning the law? Or do you find that there's only certain things in the law school curriculum that were helpful for you and that organizing is, more of a better way to learn the law? Or
I'm going to say two conflicting things. One is I want to absolutely give you permission to say no and protect yourself when you need to. You don't have to do everything. You have to count on the fact that you're in struggle with others, and they're going to pick up pieces of it. But the other thing I want to say is dive in, because this is an emergency. Your generation is not going to have a second chance to fix this stuff because of the realities of climate change, of neo-Nazis coming at us, of pandemic. These life-changing crises are going to increase. And if we don't figure out a way to pick up the pieces of a broken world and fix it, you may not be leaving a livable planet to your children. So there is no option to not be a political person right now. And figure out the places that sustain you. So you might think, oh, I'm going to skip this demonstration. And then you go and you find out that it gives you this spirit of fight and uplift and community that you need to go brief another case tomorrow for contracts. And the connections you make, the people that you will meet in struggle are going to be your lifelong partners in this. And so it's not wasted time. It's really important time figuring out who you can trust in these movements that we're creating to bring about a just world.
Mm.
And you'll learn stuff, you'll learn skills that you need, that the law school doesn't know how to teach you, by being involved in struggle.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I really liked that the time is not wasted and that the people that you meet in the struggle are lifelong, comrades or partners. That made me feel better just hearing that. So thank you. The next question is, well, I guess this one that you just answered kind of goes in line with it, but what advice do you wish you'd been given when you were a 1L?
I always told 1Ls, remember you were someone before you got to law school, because law school is a process of trying to break down that person and make a new lawyer. But lawyer and human are not separate, and your values, your intelligence, your talents and skills that you brought with you are still holding you up, and don't let anyone break that down and tell you it doesn't matter. You're smart, and smarter than a lot of the people who are teaching you. So believe that and hold on to what the people before you gave you, people in your genealogy, and you'll do just fine.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always important to remember we're holistic people. A month in, that's already like fading. So, and the reminder to tap into genealogy, I think, is really underlooked and important too. Another question is, what are the responsibilities of a Harvard Law student who wants to, confront the past and current ways that Harvard has proven itself to be a powerful tool for white supremacy among these other forms of oppression? So you mentioned earlier, we do have the right to say no and to protect ourselves, but what is also this underlying responsibility? What do we owe to be, since we're in this place of immense privilege and power?
People fought to integrate the law schools. These were all white, all male institutions not very long before you arrived. So you do have an obligation to the people who fought before you to keep up that fight. Harvard is still not integrated, especially not class integrated, and not integrated in its faculty. And the ideas that are needed in our struggles are not well represented at Harvard. So it is your job to hold on to whatever place you're in. You have to fight the institutionalized racism and institutionalized forms of all oppression and change it. And that habit of not being complicit is going to serve you well, because you're going to have to do that for the rest of your career.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question is, what forms of support were you most grateful for as a law student, or what forms of support do you wish you were provided?
The really important thing is peer support. You have to find your community, and I found it at Harvard through the Third World Coalition to Desegregate Harvard Law School. Just pathetic that movement that we had in the 80s is something you students now still have to struggle around. But Harvard is a major institution of power and of perpetuation of elites and elite ideology. So no surprise that it's going to be extremely slow in coming around to change.
Mm-hmm.
But I met wonderful people who are still my colleagues in struggle, who can still call me for help and who I will respond to and who I can still call for help. These were people that I met in student struggle. And they're wonderful, smart, the smartest people I know. So it was a great gift to me. And I was a graduate student at Harvard, an LLM student. In my JD, when I was getting my JD, I was at a state law school. And again, peer mentoring and peer help was the most important thing to me. I had to have a place where I could go and say, I don't understand this. I don't understand the rule against perpetuities, and have someone else explain it to me who was a peer who also had just figured it out yesterday. I was in a study group, and that was really important for me. And before that, I had always studied alone. And I think many of you who come to Harvard as kind of high achieving students of color developed habits of doing it on your own because everyone else was partying and you were the one in the library. That has to change in law school because law is a dialogue. So you have to find other people to study with.
That's a really helpful way of framing it. Law is a dialogue. Yeah, and centering that in the study groups. I was, exactly, the archetype slash stereotype that you just described in undergrad, always studying alone. And I found it way helpful to be in groups here. So let's see so there's two more questions. The first of the last two is,
Yes,
what
there's
role?
the dog barking.
Does he see something?
Yeah, that's my dog. And he's barking because other dogs are visiting and they will soon be gone. And then my dog will stop barking.
Okay, no worries. They're friends.
Well, not really, they're frenemies. You know, the other dog will buy for a walk every day. And my dog ritualistically barks at them and says, "This is my yard." And then
I see. Asserting territory.
Are you an animal person?
I am. I've only had cats. Hopefully
Yeah.
I can graduate one day to a dog.
Yeah. It's two completely different experiences.
Yep, I can only imagine.
Yeah. I was always a dog person and my kids wanted a cat. And I didn't understand cats, and now I kind of do.
That's funny.
They like you, but they have a really different way of showing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never really sure.
Yeah, they're really standoffish.
Yeah.
But you learn their quirks. You have to study them. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Do you think we're ready for the next one, or is this frenemies?
Ready.
Okay. So it is, what role do lawyers play in liberation and solidarity work? And why did you decide to go to law school as opposed to serving the communities you cared about in other ways?
Yeah. I went to law school because my strengths are words and ideas. And that's what lawyers do. We are masters of rhetoric. So some lawyers are also good organizers. And I think organizers are really the most important people right now in our movements. But lawyers who know how to make arguments, how to frame arguments, how to persuade, who understand structures of power. Where does the money go? Where does the power go? Who's in charge? What's their vulnerability? What tools and mechanisms can we use to reveal corrupt structures and to bring them down? Those are the talents and the skills that you learn in law school, and they're important. They are the most important, but they're important adjuncts. So I think of the lawyer as the person who the organizer, the movement builder will call in and say, okay, we've got to figure out how to go up against X institution to get X result, because organizers always focus on specific results and they're trying to get a strategy for that. The lawyer can go and figure out through Freedom of Information Act or reading financial disclosures, who has the actual power here? Maybe the institution you thought you were going up against is actually controlled by a hedge fund, and that's your real target, because the person you're arguing with has no power to change anything. And lawyers are the people that understand the legal structures, and so much of the evil that's done in this country is done through legal structures. We can understand those structures and explain them, translate them, identify their vulnerabilities. That's important. So I think we're not wasting our time teaching students these skills.
I like that idea of the lawyer as a translator. Yeah. And a quick follow-up to that, do you feel like you learned those skills through your Black letter courses, or did you have to be intentional about seeking how to find those critical lawyering skills and critical thinking skills outside of your doctrinal classes?
What you learn outside of the law school classroom is going to be more important than what you learn in the law school classroom. Duncan Kennedy at Harvard Law School long ago wrote something called Legal Education as Training in Hierarchy or something like that. And he said, you know, there are only about 5 to 10 identifiable skills you learn in the first year. They're important skills. how to read a case, how to pull out a holding, how to make counter arguments, understanding the mutability and manipulability of legal rules, extracting rules from principles, blah, blah, blah. That's an important skill. But the really important stuff is understanding how the world works, the economics, the politics, the history of racism. All of that I taught myself. That was not taught in law school. So you do have a continuing obligation of self-education. And that includes teaching yourself radical political economy, history, legal history, as it applies to poor and working people, and particularly the history of race and racism, which if you had a standard elite education, you were deprived of the information you need in that realm, and the theory around race and racism. So you're gonna have to teach yourself that, but there's a ton of good stuff out there, and you know how to go to the library and get a book.
Yeah, thank you. And the final question is, if the legal education system were completely dismantled and rebuilt next month, obviously very utopian ideal, but what would you want it to look like?
There are a lot of things I would keep. I like the idea of democracy and of people having control over their own lives through a political process. And I would keep that, but I would make it more democratic than it is now. We would have to rewrite our Constitution because it was written to protect property owners and slave owners and had racism built right into it. We have to affirmatively write anti-racist principles into our Constitution. I would like our Constitution to look much more like international human rights law and to include substantive rights to the things that people need to thrive: food, shelter, medical care, art, music, education, internet. There are a lot of things that people in a truly just and democratic society ought to have simply by the fact that they were born into our polity. I'd start there, but I do like a lot of the things that, for instance, an organization like the ACLU fights for, just basic due process rights against the government. So I think we need to keep that. And have a gradual dismantling of many of our state structures. They don't have to be as aggressive as they are now, but that we're getting into a whole theory of utopian visions, which I think is important, but they don't work in 5-minute conversations. But I've written whole articles about this, as you know.
Yes, yes. We will be sure to include some of those in the guide, but the little nugget, the teaser, is very helpful still. Well, those are all the questions we have and all the follow-up ones that I had thought of. So is there anything else you would want to add or that you want to say that didn't come up in this conversation?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you and many blessings to students at Harvard who are thinking about taking responsibility for their own education and for using their privilege. It is a wonderful thing that you got that letter of admission to Harvard Law School because it certifies you as a smart person. You don't have to worry about people not thinking you're smart anymore. And you can go out and, I'm not endorsing that process of certification, but it's a reality in our social structure. And it means you have power that you can deploy on behalf of others. So I congratulate you and I thank you for your choice to use what you have to bring about a better world.
Thank you, Professor Matsuda. That's
Thank you.
Very powerful ending words. I think such a great reminder for all the 1Ls who are starting to feel very jaded, about their decision to come here. And it's a great reminder, the power. with all the consequences and benefits that it brings, that this
Yeah.
degree
I mean,
holds.
you look at people like Kim Crenshaw, she has to raise a lot of money to do the work she wants to do. And it shouldn't matter that she went to Harvard, but it does when she goes to funders and celebrities and whoever she needs to get on board to save people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Well, thank you again.
Okay,
As
thank
we've
you.
said,
And
for
thank
your
you.
time.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're giving up this time when you could be reading a case. And I know that that's always a choice because it's a lot of reading, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but truly my pleasure to be here. And one of the, like you said, pick the things that restore you. And I feel much better now returning back to the cases after
good,
this. This is very
good.
enlightening and
Okay,
rejuvenating.
great.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
So
oh, go ahead.
I welcome you to stay in touch with me. I want to know where you take all of this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I will keep you updated on my personal law school journey, but also on the disorientation guide. And yes, where this all goes, in particular, this project.
Okay.
Definitely be staying in touch. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So nice to meet you. And I hope you have a great
Nice to
rest of
meet
your
you.
day.
Okay.
Bye.